license, or else they wouldn't be there talking on the radio. But let's say, for example, as happens sometimes in the church, a missionary will have a family who's in an area where there's been a disaster, a war, whatever, and they want to know real fast, is their family okay? So what they do is they come to somebody like me, and I call that person who is overseas in this area, was not in the US or whatever, and I talk to a ham radio operator down there, and they will either telephone or have the family come in, and the missionary and their family can talk directly over the radio. I have to make sure we're doing the switching back and forth of who's listening and that sort of stuff. But that's what it's about, is when somebody who is not licensed needs to talk on the radio.
Bob, I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you know that you're going to talk to the person you want to talk to? I mean, in other words, it isn't just like picking up the phone and calling a phone number that you know.
No, I would call, for example, let's say it's Mexico City. There's an elder here that needs to talk to their family on some kind of emergency in Mexico City. So
Okay.
I give my call, CQ. This is AD7IL calling any operator in Mexico City.
Okay.
You see, and that person who's just sitting there listening will say, okay, I pick you up. This is wherever it is, and I'm hearing you. Okay, now we have an elder here who needs to talk to his family, and they are located at this telephone number or whatever, and then they can talk directly to that the elder who's in your shack.
Okay.
Now, the sticky part about this is it is legal anywhere in the United States to go third-party traffic, anywhere at all. But it is not legal everywhere else in the world. For example, there's a list of some of the ones that are third-party traffic here in page 8-8. And you'll notice United Kingdom is there. Well, for a very long time, they weren't. And the reason was that the Queen owned the telephone company, and they didn't want ham radio people sending messages over to English people who ought to be talking on the phone and therefore getting charged for it and so forth. But when they have a lot of deals coming up, like Her Majesty had her Jubilee and things like that, they relaxed that so families can get together a little bit. But it changes all the time. And this list is good as of July 2020, but I don't, or 2022, but I don't know what it is today. You have to go to the International Amateur Radio Union and look up this country that you're talking about and say, okay, do we have third party with you? Now, it's not a problem for you, but if that person on the other end is accepting third party traffic, he may be violating his national laws, and we don't want to ask people to do that. So you have to find out when you're talking to a different country, are they able to receive third-party traffic? Now, did somebody have a question?
So
Okay.
basically, anytime we need to go out of country, we should go to the ARRL website and verify before we try to contact the other country.
Well, the other country guy, the man or woman who is the receiver of your message, may know. So Mexico City person, can I go third-party traffic on through your station to call this guy's family, that kind of a thing. And he may know. It may be something he already has experience with, so he'll be able to tell you yes or no.
Okay.
And it also could be that in Mexico, they do not, I've told you this before, they do not really enforce any rules on amateur radio. And so when you go to Mexico, you're an extra. I don't care what license you've got. But that's what third-party traffic is when I'm not talking to you, I'm talking for somebody else, or the bishop has asked me to make this announcement to everybody who's on the radio, and here we are with the message, and that's third-party traffic because the bishop is the one it's coming from.
Okay.
And
Mhm.
if you look down here on the bottom of 8-7, you can see what kind of traffic it is, but basically it's traffic that you are not originating, but a third party it's intended for a third party, or it's coming from a third party. For example, the stake president wants us to all do whatever it is he wants us to do. And I will say to you, okay, this is from the stake president, and you know what who that is and what's going on, and here's his message. So that's third-party traffic. But it's really handy when you have somebody, maybe a kid, who wants to play with grandma's radio or something like that. Sit down with them and go through the process that you would go through to go on to wherever it is you're going. And then give them the microphone, let them talk. But I'm turning the mic over now to my friend, Greg Williams, and he's going to say hello. And maybe that's all he says, but at the same time, that's third party because he's not licensed. Does anybody else have questions about this? This is a real good way to introduce people to radio. Show you what happened to me one time. I had 2 elders, and I try to have the elders in every time I can get them to come into my shack and see what's going on. So they'll realize, believe it or not, there is a church radio system. There's a lot of people out there who don't know it. And so I said to the made it CQ to just anybody who wanted to reply. And this guy came back. Hello, this is so-and-so, and I'm giving me a call sign and everything. I said, I have the Mormon elders here, and we're talking about missionary experiences because these guys have on their mission now, and when they go home, they're thinking about radio. I said, oh, well, I was a missionary in Argentina back whenever it was, and so I got missionaries swapping stories over my radio. So that's what third-party traffic is when you have somebody else going on the air. Now, as I've said, it's legal anywhere in the United States, but as we know, Brenda's going to be leaving, so you'll have to find out what third-party traffic is like in Japan. But any radio operator who has a license will be able to tell you, do we do this or do we not do this? And do we do it to certain places and not others?
Well, it's not on this list.
Japan?
Yep.
You're right.
But I have a question, Bob.
Yes,
If it's a military base that's under the operation of the US that you're going through, that would count as US territory, not a
It
foreign
would.
country.
It would, but at the same time, you don't want to antagonize people. If you understand what I mean. Yes, the United States military bases are sovereign territory. but you don't want to pull the tail on the donkey unless you're ready to get kicked. And countries go on and off this. There are FCC lawyers that just go around and negotiate these treaties, and you don't know what it is. In fact, that's one of the reasons that when anybody gets a second license, it's usually a US license. They may never have been to the United States, but we have second or third party traffic agreements with all kinds of people. So maybe where they are does not have an agreement, but the Americans do, and that will be enough for him to get on the air. So you might just kind of ask some of the people who've been there a while, how do we handle this? What do we do? And that would be something that I recommend on any kind of a thing with foreign countries. And if you go to radio clubs, always try to go to your local radio club, and that no matter what's going on. But when you have a question or a problem, I can't get my antenna to work, whatever, the club members can usually give you some help. And something like third-party traffic, can we do it from here or not? That would be a question that I would ask in a club, and the people there would know. But third-party traffic is a good way to get people who are not licensed into the hobby and get them some experience, and people will appreciate that. Come over and see my radio station. Now, this is a good thing to do with neighbors. You put up an antenna, and there's going to be everybody in the world saying, you took off my favorite television show because you put up that darned antenna. One of the things that I have learned over the many years is you put up an antenna and then you, okay? And they come over and say, you killed my father because he had a heart attack and his pacemaker didn't work, and it was your darn radio that did it. My darn radio is not connected to the antenna. It can't send out a signal. That way for a week. That's the only kind of way you can deal with those kind of people, because they're not rational. When somebody's having big problems with their television or whatever, they're not rational. It's all your fault, no matter what. Okay. Did somebody have a question?
No, Rufus was just saying hi to you.
Okay. Rufus, and I'm sorry, the rules are the way they are. Remote or automatic operating. I have been looking a great deal into this recently because I really wasn't sure what remote was. But what it is let's say that my landlord or my neighborhood or whatever it is will not allow me to put up antennas. I put up my radio station and everything goes not into the antenna, but into the internet. Now the internet will carry it to wherever I send it. Let's say I send it to my brother's house and he lives up in Bandon. And he's got it set up so that the antenna that he has at his house will pick up the internet. You see, I'm talking over my brother's house, but I'm talking over the internet. And there's a lot of people out there who think our antennas look ugly. I don't want to have those antennas up there all the time. They look icky. Well, let's imagine it's the middle of the night and it's raining. Your friend or your spouse or whatever is having a heart attack. The phones are out and you cannot get a ambulance there for love or money. My antenna can get real easy.
Your neighbor will love you.
That's what you have to do. It's because these people, like I say, they're not rational. Television and like that are not close to ham waves with all kinds of terrible ideas and things that you're a spy sending stuff overseas and all kinds of things. If I was a spy, I'd use email. I wouldn't use radio. But anyway, the remote is what that is you have a box on your desk, and all the radios go into that, and that goes into the internet, and it goes over to wherever we have it. There's a computer there. The internet is hooked up to it. It comes in, and that computer switches it onto the antennas, and the signal goes out. This is the way to go. It is not cheap, and it is not easy to do, but can be done, and that's the business we're in. So we do that. We have to. Okay. Who is an accountable for a repeater malfunction? It's in the book. You should have read it. Okay, every repeater, before it goes on the air, has to have a designated person to be in charge of it. That person must have a general license or above. If something goes wrong with it, you need to fix it. Who's responsible? Well, it's not like a repeater will malfunction and you suddenly have destroyed something like somebody's car or house. I suppose if a tree falls over and crushes it, but that's not really caused by radio. But whoever owns the repeater, let's say we have a guy who's in charge of it, and we're the club. A control operator is the guy or girl who is in charge of this radio right here. And you go right down the street to another station, and it's me here, it's Carol there, it's Debbie there, and on, and the person who is driving the radio. That's a control operator. But the person who's in charge of the repeater is somebody who has been like selected by the group or something like that, and they're responsible for what happens on that repeater. That's why when we have a net and everybody's together and we're all trying to talk at the same time, the control operator for the net is responsible for what goes out over the air. So if he says, Nancy, it's your time to talk. John, could you have anything to add tonight or whatever? That's the person who's supposed to speak. Now, if I would say break, 87IL here, I'd like to say something on that subject, and they would then ask me to do that. I can't force my way in, but that control operator who is controlling the net control, has a lot of responsibility to keep it getting along together, if nothing else. I want you all to think about net control as a job you want to get. Maybe you're not going to do it every night. Maybe you won't do it once a week, but you should be able to do it. So if everybody shows up, but the net control person who's in charge doesn't, you can say, okay, I'll do it. I want to tell you about another Debbie that you guys don't know. blind lady who was in my last class, and she got her technician license. And the first time that the local net was on, she came on the air. The net control had not showed up yet, hadn't checked in. And she said, is there going to be a net tonight? Who's in charge? Everybody said, well, it's somebody else, you know. Well, if you want to, I'll do it myself. She'd had her license about 20 minutes. And she did an excellent net. Nobody laughed at her. Nobody called her names. Oh, by the way, Debbie's blind. The other Debbie, not you. But the thing is, everybody aspires to learn how to be net control. And there's only one way to learn to be net control. To do it. So I want you all to put down on your list of things I haven't done yet, but I need to do right away, is learn net control. Listen to a couple of nets, you'll get the story pretty quick. And then go ahead and volunteer. Every net has its own way of starting and procedure and things like that. But if you've been through it a couple of times, you'll know where to get the information and the spiel and whatever you're supposed to do. Now, prohibited transmission. If you're going to talk about race, derogatory things, you're prohibited. You can talk about anything you want. You can express political opinions. You can do whatever you like, but don't be derogatory about it. You can't play music over the radio. Did somebody have a question on that?
Somebody barked on the road.
Okay, you're talking over there. Okay, back in the day, back in the 1920s, anybody who wanted to have a radio could have one, and they could put on pretty much anything they wanted. As things went along, the people who wanted to have commercial radio stations will play music. Well, I can play a lot of music. I get my uncle in here, and he plays the piano or something like that. Pass a law against us as amateurs playing music, and it's still in effect. Not because we get upset when little kids sing happy birthday to grandpa who's in another state. It's because they don't want people tuning in for the music to amateur radio. And the only amateur radio music you can do is if you are replaying something from a space station that has music involved in it. Pretty limited thing, because they don't do it much at all. But do not play music. Do not swear and talk nasty. And the other type is stuff that you don't identify. For example, every time I go on the air, this is Bob Sturdivant, AD7IL in Coos Bay. There's only one AD7IL in this whole country, and you're looking at it. When you get your call signs, it'll be the same way. If you went on, and there were some people here who just were doing it here in Coos Bay, was a guy to pick up the microphone in the morning, and he wouldn't identify himself, but he started talking to his buddy down the street. Well, we had to find out who it was so that we could tell the FCC that he was going on without identifying, and then they sent him a very nasty letter, and he ceased and desisted right away. Anytime you're on the air, they need to know who you are. At one time, we were worried about spies. During World War I, World War II, man, there were people all over the place listening for spies. But anybody who's using the air should be able to identify themselves with name and or call sign. If you can't do that, or if you're going to play music, or if you're going to talk nasty, those are all prohibited. Not a lot of real restriction there. Most of us don't have a situation in our life where we do that. I certainly don't. I have some rather strange opinions, but then we all know that, don't we? But anyway, those are the three things that are prohibited. Business. This gets a lot of people in trouble. If I have a business where I'm selling things, electronic things, radios and so forth, I can't use my ham radio to advertise it. John comes up and says, well, I got a problem with my antenna. And I say, well, come on over to the store and I'll fix that up for you. Can't do that. That's against the law. This is not a commercial operation. There's a list here on page 810, which gives us some ideas of what you can do. For example, you can make or cancel a doctor's appointment. That is okay. And not make or break a commercial business appointment. If you're a salesman going around selling people. You can advertise that you have a radio or something like that to swap at time. A given period where they talk about, do you have anything you want to swap or trade or whatever? And that's the way a lot of people get equipment. That's all right, but you can't do it every day. If we have a weekly net, and I said, yes, I've got a speaker I want to get rid of here. I want to do that. And the next week I come back and I got a repeater I want to get rid of. And it gets to the point where the net control says, well, what do you got for us tonight, Bob? That's illegal. That's a business. That's where you're doing business on the air, and that's illegal. Selling anything else, for example, if you're selling household goods, or I got a bunch of chickens I want to get rid of or whatever, that's illegal to start with. You can mention having electronic things for sale or things related to the amateur radio, but only once in a while. You can't sell things for regular sales. And you can't advertise your profession. For example, back in the days when I was a printer, I couldn't say, well, come on over to my print shop and I'll design a QSL card for you so you can send it out to everybody and I'll have a real nice QSL for you. I can't do that. I could do it on the side, but I can't mention it over the radio. If you think about these things, I think most of us can figure out what's not right, but I still can't understand why you can order a pizza, but you can't tell somebody you're coming in to have your car lubed. There are reasons for these things. I'm sure somebody could explain it to me, but I don't understand that particular one. Okay, enciphered transmissions. And transmission is one where it's designed to not be able to be read. For example, codes, ciphers, things like that. And all of you are sitting back there saying, wait a minute, what about Morse code? Morse code is not a code, it is a language. Everybody who wishes to can study Morse code and it'll be fine. You'll understand everything I'm saying with CW. If we have a digital program that I'm using and you study up on it and find out what it is and everything, and you should be able to receive the information that I'm sending out as well as anybody else. But if I have a little secret thing going on with Greg here, and I send him messages over the radio that you guys can't understand, then that's illegal. There's really not many things you can't do. I've covered them all here, and it's just, that's not very restrictive if you think about it. But if I was going to buy a piece of equipment, for example, and Debbie says, I have a this or a that for sale. And I said, okay, Debbie, does it do this or that? And she'd tell me that. We don't want to take up the net time, and we don't want to be doing the sales pitches over the air. So you have my phone number, Debbie, call me after the net. And we do the actual deal on the phone. Does anybody have questions on any of this? Okay. Broadcasting and retransmitting. Amateur radio operators do not transmit. You do not broadcast anything. The only thing that we can broadcast is if maybe I set up a deal where I'm at 2 o'clock, I'm going to come on the air and I'm going to teach you guys Morse code. Anybody wants to learn, come in. Or maybe licensing or something like that. If I want to talk, if I want to do it the way it's supposed to be done, I'm going to say, John, I'm going to call you here, and John, this is 87IL, Bob here in Coos Bay, and I want to talk to you about this. He's the only one I'm expecting to pick up. Anybody could do it. Anybody can pick up and listen, no problem. But he's the one I'm intending to talk to. Broadcasting is when I am sitting all by myself. Oh, and I expect John to answer me. That's the second part of it. If you're broadcasting, you're sending out signal to everybody in the world. It doesn't matter. They're all can get it. All I have to do is tune in. But I don't expect any of them to call me. That's the difference between broadcasting and transmitting. I'll hear a lot of times with people, how far can you broadcast with your radio? I can't broadcast anything on my radio. I can transmit a heck of a lot, but I can't broadcast. And that difference is one of the questions you're going to have to deal with.
Okay, Bob, I have a question. If you were aware of some conditions, let's say road condition between 2 points or something, is that considered broadcasting to say that on the air?
To make an announcement, yes, it would be, but that would be correct to do. What I would do maybe is I would call the highway patrol. Would somebody please notify the highway patrol that Highway 101 is missing? Whatever you have to say. What I'm talking about is when your cat calls Debbie's cat and they're talking to each other, that's transmitting, that's not broadcasting. And on the test, there will be, you will need to know that. Retransmitting is when you transmit something that's already been broadcast. Well, you have to do it in such a way that people don't think it's news. For example, let's say I decided to rebroadcast the Pearl Harbor attack. But I didn't tell people ahead of time, this is history, folks. This is not a real thing that's happening now. You understand what I'm talking about. You need to be clear. Now, if we say, we just had a very dear friend die, and this is his last transmission to me, and it really, really is something that's moving. I want you all to hear this last transmission of so-and-so, and he's going to talk to us here. And then I push the button. Everybody who's paying attention knows that that's not him. But anyway, retransmissions are allowed, but you have to be very careful about how you do it so that people don't get excited about the fact that it's happening again. For example, when I was out with my son, who lives in North Carolina, and when I go on the air and I say, okay, I'm on a 2-meter rig, a small 2-meter rig without a lot of power. I'm in North Carolina and I'm saying, okay, this is Bob Sturdivant, AD7IL, and they all have heart attacks because they didn't know a 2-meter rig could go that far. So the way you do that is you say, this is Bob Sturdivant, AD7IL/4. That I'd be in the North Carolina area with a 4 on my call sign. So that's the end of this thing. Has anybody got questions? Mostly common sense will get you through this, but there have been some people. For example, there was one group up in Washington. Actually, there are 2 logging companies, and they felt it would be cheaper or better or whatever if they used ham radio instead of CB. And they went out and bought ham radios, put it in their equipment, and were using that as part of their commercial business. Does that scream illegal to you? You know,
Bob, if we inadvertently do something we don't realize is wrong, I'm assuming somebody will correct us really quick if they hear us.
Or ask somebody. They're not going to come and take you off to jail because your cat sat on the microphone and made it go. At the same time, you need a license to be there,
right? And
you already have that under control. So no, not if it's something simple, something easy, something, oops, I just did it. But if, for example, you were on your radio and you're not listening, you're transmitting, and then you walk off and leave it going. That signal, no information on it, but that signal is going out. And that's going to interfere with things that are happening elsewhere. Okay, you're just a technician, licensee, you just got it. That's not a problem, Carol, you're all right. But if I did it, 23 years in the biz,
you know better.
I know better. So you just have to kind of say, oh, gee, that's the way it is,
Okay.
Because one thing we have to be understanding, and if a lot of the people at the FCC, they'll get these complaints, so-and-so is doing this or that or with the other thing. And then you realize if you just told the guy he was wrong or ask him not to do whatever it was he's doing, if you just gave him the benefit of the doubt, there would be no problem. You have to make a federal case out of it. And so everybody gets in and we have to write letters and stuff like that. Anybody's can make a mistake, but at the same time, let's not make the same one more than once. Does anybody but Rufus have a question? I know he's got his tail up there, so he's.
He's raising his hand.
Okay, how are we doing on our scores?
I followed Nancy's advice. Every time I had a question wrong, I wrote down the right answer. And I think by combining writing as well as reading, I'm now up to 62. It's still not the best, but I'm up from my 35.
Well, 62 is getting there.
Yeah, it is. I'm inching my way up. Yep.
How about you, Brenda? I saw you waving your hand for a moment.
Where do you find it? It's online.
Brenda, how are you doing on your test?
I have not taken the test recently, but I have 2 weeks off coming up. So once I'm off my pain medications, I'll give it a go a few times.
Okay,
I have-
and remember,
I
folks,
have-
remember, they don't give you a test every month. So we may be into February before you can test for this stuff.
I
How about
do
you?
have a question though, Bob. When
Yeah.
we go over chapter 9, we're gonna break it down. We're not gonna do it all at once, right? The
Oh, no.
safety.
I usually break them at least in half. If we get into something and you guys have a problem with it and we have to take time, I'm more than happy to just, we only do 3 pages or whatever it is. And we'll just stop there and let you get a chance to grab a hold of that. Because it's more important that you understand it than I finish by any certain time. Carol, are you making attempt on your tests?
Not yet, but I
Well,
think Bob and I are going to challenge ourselves to do it here.
okay. Well,
Like
the
I said,
thing
I
is,
like the practice tests because they give you, they'll show you the right answer. And so that's what I really like doing.
if you go on the computer, you'll get they don't all do it, but some of them will give you the answer when you put down the wrong one. And
Yeah, I
that's-
go to the study mode.
Okay,
Yeah.
Debbie, what do you log on to?
I go to that hamstudy.org. It'll ask you which test, you say technician, and then you have your choice, and I click on study mode. And it will let you know if it's the wrong answer, then you can click in the corner for the right answer, and then it'll keep track of how you're doing. Like I said, I'm up to 62%.
Okay, I wrote it down, so he can do that at home. Okay.
Yeah, like I
Yeah.
said, that's the only way that I just keep going over them and over them and over. And the nice thing is if you get one wrong, 3 or 4 questions later, it'll bring that one back up again until you get it right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what
And
I
that-
like. It's like, okay, drill it into me. Eventually I'll get it.
That's the thing about this is if you just repeat it enough times, you will get a
Exactly.
score that you're going to be passing on. Nancy, how are you doing on your tests?
Oh, I'm all over the place, anywhere between 61 on a test to 85 on the test.
Well, you're getting up there.
Yep.
John, how are you doing?
You're on mute.
You're muted.
I haven't taken a couple weeks, but I'm typically in the 70s or 80s.
Okay.
Good job.
If you're getting 70s, then 80 is not that far away. And as we have already discussed, 80 is a passing score. Mr. Gregg, how are you doing?
I've been averaging 94 or 96 pretty much every time I take it now.
Are you looking at the general class book?
Yes.
Okay, because what happens when you pass your test, they will say, okay, we'll give you your next test if you want it.
Hmm.
And obviously, if you're getting 90s and something else on the general, you ought to take that. You could walk off with 2 licenses instead of just 1.
Okay.
There's no reason anybody can't do that, because when you pass, they will say, do you want to take the next test? And I would say, even if you don't think you have a chance, take the test, because then you've had a look at what those questions are like. And when you start studying for them, you'll know how you're doing. And if you can identify a place where you're not very strong, you need to improve, give me a call. We can work on this and we can have you up to speed whenever we know. But I need to know what you're having trouble with, and therefore say it's Ohm's law or whatever it is. We can concentrate on that, just you and me, and that way you'll be able to do it.
Okay.
So are we all thinking about Christmas and tell Santa Claus to bring me a transmitter?
I am the Santa Claus.
Oh, we knew that. We knew that.
I'll be the Grinch.
But anyway, you can have a radio and listen to it. It's a good thing to do, like when they have the meeting at 7:30 on Tuesday nights. Tune in. If you haven't got a license, don't have to check in, but find out what it's like, what it's about, what people are talking about. And that's all get you experience, so you can have a better time at it when you and check in yourself. We can't be afraid to go on the radio and talk to people. There's one lady I worked with for months to get her through her license. Check in for 3 weeks. You know, when you can drive. Okay, well, that's all I have tonight, and we'll do safety next week. And a lot of it is pretty self-explanatory, but we'll go through it carefully, make sure you all have it understanding. So I'm turning it back to you, Greg.
Okay.
So what do you want us to study for next week?
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9, okay.
I wouldn't go more than halfway through it, but it'll be in chapter 9.
Coffee table.
Okay. I will have the recording for this session up on our Facebook page probably by tonight or tomorrow morning at some point. And Brenda, it'll be on my YouTube page.
You never have told me how to get there, incidentally.
Okay, I will talk you through it probably tomorrow afternoon.
Fine.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Mhm.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.